Hello, I'm Ann Roebuck with Envision Strategies. Thank you for joining me for our third Thought Leadership Series. And today I have Lucas Miller with me. He is the Director of Residential Dining Services at Colorado State. Lucas, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Like I said, Lucas Miller, Director of Residential Dining. And at Colorado State, we have two on-campus food service operators. So I'm part of Housing and Dining Services. So our mission is to serve all the students that live in our apartment communities and in our residence halls. CSU also has another on-campus entity that oversees our Laurie Student Center, and they oversee food court and the traditional catering on campus. And also they have some satellite locations throughout campus in different academic buildings that they oversee. So in residential dining, what we serve over 6,000 students who have meal plans. And that's kind of our main focus. Also, we support some of our feeding our students that live in our apartment communities. And we serve probably about 2.5 million meals a year. So we serve a lot of very hungry students and guests that come to us over the summer. And so it definitely keeps us very busy.
You are certainly busy, and thank you for joining us today. I think the first topic I'd like to talk about is overcoming complexities. So what are some of the different challenges that arise from complexities that you have faced?
One of, I think, the major complexities that I think all of us have working on a college campus is really the bureaucracy of working in a college and a university. And if you think about it, it really does make sense because, universities are obviously, people know the main mission is to educate, but within a campus, really, it's not just that. It's education, research, athletics, and on, and commercial operations. And then you think about all the different entities that are there to support the campus, which includes dining. Mm-hmm. So one of the complexities of working within a campus is all of those competing priorities within the campus and how you kind of manage through advocating for what you need for the department and what you need for your employees amongst all the other competing priorities and that we have on our campus. And so that does add a complexity that I think all of us that work in universities and colleges understand. And so, every campus is a little different in how they manage it. So, but I think that if you think about it at the core of what's complex in terms of the uniqueness of running a dining facility within a university, it's kind of being able to understand where you sit in the campus and then how you navigate through that greater bureaucracy and those differing opinions. So I think that's one of the main complexities that I probably have.
So navigating those bureaucracies or those, I like to call them silos, but navigating those, is that one of the strategies, or what are the strategies that you have employed to overcome this complexity of the bureaucracy you've mentioned?
Really, and it's probably individualized every campus. At Colorado State, one of the things that works really well is building relationships across campus. We're a very relationship-oriented campus. So what really helps is to know what the resources are across campus and who can help you and who can advocate for you. And being able to be in the space across campus to tell your story. Through the pandemic, I think that was probably one of the biggest examples that we had is there was so much going on. And what we had to do as a dining department is really tell our story, talk about what it was like for our employees that were staying on campus and working and what their needs were compared to our employees who had left remotely. So I think the biggest one really for us is kind of like, how do you build those relationships? And then how do you find others can also help advocate for you? Kind of to be able to cut through that, the red tape, if you will.
That's so true. I think when others understand your story, what you're about, what your goals and aspirations are, and when they hear that, they want to help you. Right? It's that whole relationship aspect that you spoke about that they want to help make dining better. So I think that is probably true at most universities, right? Or even in the business or corporate world. It's about the relationships that you have. So it really, in a way, isn't very different from other food service industries, right? Or sectors. It is really not very different from other food service sectors.
Yeah, and I always joke, for us too, it's taking the long game, right? So I always joke, CSU has been here since 1870, so we can take the long game to sort out when some of these issues, right? And us dining folks, we like to get things done right away, and we're very result oriented individuals, which is what makes us successful in our business. But sometimes when you're working within a university, it's really sorting out, what can you accomplish today and what can we accomplish over time? Because sometimes, the complexity of a university that we're in, especially being a state school, is that we're also under state laws that we have to abide by. We have a union with some of our employees, and we have a shared governance model in universities where faculty and staff have a say for through their faculty staff councils, and so you really sometimes, if we want change right away, sometimes it can happen, but sometimes you also have to understand you can take the long, you have to take a long-term approach. And for the most part, for us, as long as we keep building relationships and advocating, and we have realistic timelines, we've really have been able to see that for us, the university has really been helpful and advocated for our staff and advocated for our services. And in the end, we do this really so that we can have the best services for our students that live with us.
That's so right. And having that perspective of in it for the long game or the long term outcome is a great way to look at it. Yes, we try to solve problems every day in our industry, but I think it's important, just what you said, to play the long game, if you will. Dining programs are always looking for new sources of revenue or how they can be more profitable. But what new sources of revenue have you been able to discover on the CSU campus?
So one of the things that we identified in our work with Envision is that we rely very heavily on board plan as our revenue source. So we've been looking at different options for how we can both support our residential students and look at ways that we can bring in non-board plan funds in and maybe support some of the greater campus. So one of the initiatives that we have are our unattended vending, which we call our mini markets, and we have our pilot one was in a residential facility, and it did exceptionally well. And we found out that the students that live in the building, it really met a need for those students to be able to access food 24/7, because we lean on the technology for students to check out where they can use their meal plans, or credit debit cards. From that work and what we learned with Envision is that we saw some opportunities where we could support, for example, where we just opened up one of our new mini markets is in one of our apartment communities. And that location in the apartment community that we put the mini market in is actually a classroom that students across campus use. So we just opened it not too long ago. It's been extremely successful. And one of the benefits we found is that, yes, it does allow our residential students with meal plans and off campus meal plans to use that location. But we've also seen a tremendous amount of non board plan funds come in. So it's allowed us to kind of leverage technology, with our understanding of what we had through Envision to find kind of a new source of revenue, but also yet still support our residential students.
And can you tell our audience today what that code word was or code name was for the project and where that came from?
So with Envision, we did Envision conducted a study, and one part of this study was to figure out at what times of days students and what location they were at on campus at what times of the day. And the map that Envision put out had different zones for what those locations were. And one of the zones was Zone 11. And so code name for that mini market for internally has been Zone 11. And then when we talked with folks on campus, they didn't know what the heck we were talking about. But eventually we said, well, okay, we'll just go back to regular mini market name.
That's great. Thank you. Now I'd like to move on to our next topic of discussion, which is overcoming resource roadblocks. So Lucas, what are 3 resource limitations that you think are the most notable roadblocks into running the CSU dining program?
Well, I'd like to say it's money, money, and money.
Isn't it always?
It is. I mean, really everything in some way is connected to that. It's just a reality. But in seriousness, one of them is our funding model, our revenues is balancing out how do you run an affordable program, especially as a land grant institution, where we can maintain room and board rates that allow as much access to coming to our campus as possible, at the same time balancing out the inflationary costs that we all have with food and labor. So I think that's one of the main roadblocks that we have is kind of sorting through how you balance out what you charge for your board plan, and then how we are able to keep funding our operation and continue to move forward. So in the sense of money, I think that's probably the clearest roadblock that we have that we manage through. I think one of the other roadblocks we have is labor. And it's definitely better now than it was as the pandemic was winding down. And because at that point, we were hardly getting any applicants for our positions that we posted. And thankfully, we're at a point now where we're getting a lot of well-qualified applicants.
What do you think has turned that around for the getting qualified applicants for you?
To be totally transparent, I could talk about the efforts and energies that all of us went into and across campus. We have some great folks in housing and dining that helps do recruitment. The state has made some changes to some of the salaries, but really, honestly, I think it's macroeconomic issues that's almost somewhat out of our control. And it for us, it was almost just struggling through that time period where folks weren't coming back to work for all kinds of very valid reasons. And then moving through the cost of living increases that we saw. And so now what really I think is motivating folks to apply for jobs with us is that we're the employer of choice in the region. We've recently got a lot of individuals who started working for us that worked in local restaurants. And the benefit of having holiday time that's paid. For example, we have fall break coming up. The university gave us the entire week off paid. And that's something that they haven't seen before when they work in a commercial restaurant. So really, we're leaning on the benefits of working for a state university, and specifically working at CSU, where I think we do an exceptional job of really focusing on our employees and what our employees' needs are. I think that's kind of helped yield a result of us getting more employees to apply and some more employees to stay.
Well, it never hurts in your community to be the employer of choice, right? That gives you that greater access to the pool of applicants. So I'd like to move on to our third topic for today. And I wanted to talk about performance solutions. And my first question is, are you using KPIs in dining? And if so, What are they?
We definitely have KPIs. I think they're probably similar to what mostly other dining operations are using. If it's you know food costs and labor percentages, and our plate cost and um, meal swipes per labor hour and things like that. And so those are all we've been tracking all of those for a long time. One of the things that we have found that's been really interesting as our business shifts a little bit more to retail operations as we lean on technology. It's interesting to see some of those KPIs change. The retail business, it impacts kind of some of our financials in different ways. So, for example, one of the changes is been in our missed meal factor. Our missed meal factor has gone way down, meaning our students are using their meal plans more frequently, but our financials, on the other hand, are looking good. And what we found is that our retail model that we've used has allowed students to use their meal plans more. But because of the retail model where we're able to control labor and food a little bit better, it's still maintaining our financials to be in a good place. So it's just been fascinating how our KPIs have changed over the last few years as we move to retail. And sometimes we see these numbers and you go, oh no, our missed meal factor is going way down. That's not good. But when we contextualize it to us moving into more retail, we can see where that actually is a net benefit for our students because they're actually able to use the meal plan
Well,
more.
it seems like it's a win-win for not only the students because they're using their meal plan more, but for the program as well. If you're finding that being in more of a controlled retail environment, that is better for you financially, then it feels like it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, so far, I mean, really, what we're seeing that students really appreciate on our campus the technologies that we're bringing with mobile ordering and how we've converted. One of our main dining centers we converted from all you care to eat to a retail operation, and the number of transactions we have are way higher now as a retail operation than they were prior to the pandemic when it was all you care to eat. Of course, we also lean on our great all you care to eat locations because they can feed more students, and they have better throughput. But these retail operations and leaning on technology, where our campus has been and our students are really adopted this, and they're really appreciating the fact that they can kind of also enter some of these spaces that had a paywall, and now they can actually use some of the spaces as their de facto lounges and places to meet. And so even changing the way the facilities are designed and how they're utilized has been a net benefit for some of our dining centers and the residence halls that are nearby that maybe didn't have lounges. So it has been a bit of a win-win. So we'll take it.
That's great. Have you been using any innovative ways to track your metrics or KPIs?
We utilize probably the same things that a lot of other schools are doing currently, but we have some pretty exciting stuff that we're working on. We're really lucky in housing and dining that we also have a housing and dining technology department, and they've really been working on data analytics and Power BI and leaning in on AI and machine learning. It's super exciting. Their first projects have been working on occupancy for the residence halls, and they're using AI and prediction to try to sort out how many students we'll have coming in fall semester, how many melt away in spring. And so one of their next projects we've asked is, can they help dining piece together, for one, a dashboard where we can take information from multiple systems, bring it together, and have one dashboard that has our KPIs that we can share across our department. So our managers in the dining centers will see this dashboard, and we see it as administrators. And then our next step, our ask is, can you use your all the data we get from our students to find ways to possibly predict how many students will pick which meal plan we have? And then because that really determines how we budget in the future. and we take a lot of guesses based on historical knowledge, but leaning on technology to be able to pull all this data together, use machine learning or whatever magic they have, and then kind of try to tell us like, hey, here's what we're predicting. This number of students will be in these buildings paying these rates. These number of students will be on this meal plan versus that meal plan. So I see over the next few years being able to lean in on this type of technology to really hone in on what our revenues will look like, and then therefore like what services we can offer as we move forward.
Well, that's great. I mean, I know many dining programs struggle with multiple reporting, different systems, and being able to pull that together, hopefully very soon, to give you a dashboard is going to be great. And then leaning into the use of AI for predictive behavior, you may put me out of a job. We spent a lot of time working on predictive behavior together based on historical data. And if you have AI that can do that, then you're going to be one leg up from the next dining program.
Well, I think there's still a lot of work where, the data going in still needs to be understood and contextualized. Right. And that takes expertise of, if they're looking at, occupancy and our residence halls, you still have to have the knowledge of what those buildings are. And that's beyond what I think the technology's, maybe someday it'll be there and then we'll all be out of a job. But don't worry, we will still need help in other ways, understanding what our business is and how we move forward. So, no, I don't think we're out of a job yet.
Well, good. Well, Lucas, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on our Thought Leadership Series, and wish you and the program the best success in the next coming years.